welcome everybody to Battle Bridge Labs podcast number 1. I'm here with Charles Lumpkin. Charles and I met, I was watching, this was back in the aughts, back in 2007 or 2008. I was surfing around the internet, getting ready to build my e-commerce business, which was just a twinkle in my eye at the time, and had run across a video interview or a video podcast that Charles was doing with another guy that was an eBay advertiser at the time. And I had reached out to Charles regarding whenever I was launching some PPC campaigns early on, and he was kind enough to sit down with me and give me some thoughts and ideas on how to launch my first campaigns. And then he also made an introduction to me to a guy named Adam Lean, who at the time he owned an e-commerce store called the Skate Authority, and I believe it's called Roller Skate Nation now, or Skate Nation. And Adam, and between Charles and Adam, that's what launched cherryloop.com into success. So Charles has a lot of, unbeknownst to him, over the last 5 years, has been a big influence in our lives. And so it allowed it to make it successful and allowed us to eventually launch our PPC agency. So without further ado, this is Charles Lumpkin. Charles?
Hey guys, it's good to meet you. Thanks for having me on today. And the intro's probably a little over the top. A simple conversation a couple of years ago is one thing, but it takes a lot of hard work and perseverance. So kudos to you, Charles.
Yeah, thanks. So, like I said, so we had chatted or traded some emails over the years. What's interesting, and you probably don't even remember this, but this would have been back in 2008 in our original conversation. I was trying to set up some campaigns, and I was really nervous about breaking into AdWords because, we had a small budget at the time, and you had suggested take some ideas from Perry Marshall, which I did, and launch those over into Bing ads. And that really helped because Bing, as you know, only has about 30% it may even be less than that now, of AdWords traffic. And so that helped me get my feet wet a little bit. And so that was something that you wrote that you suggested that I do early on. It was a long time ago. This is back when you had just launched, well, not just launched, but you had charleslumpkin.com. And I'm curious, Charles, what you've been up to since 2008. If you want to give us a quick rundown of what you've been up to, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. Well, I started Charles Lumpkin & Partners back in 07-08, and it was basically an online performance media buying agency. So we focused our efforts on just performance buying, and that's by and large what I built my career on. So we did a lot of AdWords, certainly some display, and we also did some social media advertising. So at the time, Facebook was just starting to, they just recently opened up their ad platform, and we started doing experiments there and getting some good results. And I built that agency up and eventually sold it to a company called Blink Media here in town. And we took Blink from about $1 million a year to about $15 million a year over the course of about 2.5 years, 3 years, and we ultimately sold that to Gannett, the publicly traded corporation, in August of 2012. I stayed on with Gannett for about a year after the acquisition. Started a new department there to create Facebook advertising tools for small and medium-sized businesses, of which Gannett had over 100,000 SMB customers. So that was cool. It was fun. I ultimately left there to start a new business, which we're actually launching here in the next week and a half. So it's an exciting time.
Excellent. So what is your new business? Do you want to go into that, or you want to save that for another time in the future?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we spent a lot of time. We originally were building a smartphone application that would allow parents to video conference with a pediatrician at any time. And on the surface, it's a great idea. we spent a lot of time. We talked with hundreds of parents over the course of a couple months to understand what was out there, would they really use a service like this, et cetera. And ultimately, we found that there were some psychological immunities that would keep people from using a service like that. And so my interest in starting businesses is to make sure that you start off on the best foot and that you have a good market and a great opportunity to grow very quickly. So through a lot of research, we refined and focused the idea. And we're now actually working with parents and children who are overweight, and of which is, there's it's about 30% of the children in the nation that are overweight or obese, and unfortunately that is getting larger. And so there's really not a solution to help these people. And a lot of people have tried a lot of different things. So we've put together a new set of software. It's basically group video conferencing software. And we put together a team of some of the most qualified experts in the country who are dealing with this. And it's pediatricians, registered dietitians, child psychologists, and exercise trainers, exercise physiologists, to kind of attack this from many different angles and really help these people. Our goal is to serve these people with in the most sincere and authentic way and help them improve the lives of their children now and into the future.
Wow, that sounds like a big project. And how long have you been working on this?
We've been working on this iteration for about 4 months. All in, we've been working on this company for about 10 months. Wow,
that's pretty cool. So, so as far as that, and we can break into whatever you'd like, with our audience. I think a lot of the people, a lot of our listeners know that I'm do a lot of PPC management, host the community over at Battle Bridge Labs for a lot of people that are breaking into PPC or online advertising. And you can, if you have some thoughts or ideas, either on, I'm not sure, I'd love to hear how you plan on using online advertising to promote your new business, but that may or may not be something that that is a big part of that. You may have some other, you mentioned you built some Facebook tools for your previous agencies, and was curious if you had some thoughts, ideas, some quick things that that some of our listeners can take to the house and apply in their own businesses.
Sure. Online advertising is pretty much an integral component of any business that I am involved in. It's I've spent a lot of time honing my skills, building teams, building software in online advertising, and I understand it very deeply. And so it's definitely an integral part. Certainly using search engine marketing, and our efforts so far have been quite good, and the campaigns are working pretty well. It's funny, I had to go back. I've run so many different types of campaigns over the years. Many years ago, I ran a team of about 12 people, and we did for a different agency. I was an employee at the time, but we were running campaigns for Home Depot, At Home Services, and just kind of these big brands. And I've had experience running campaigns where you're doing a couple $1 million a month in spend, and I've certainly had experience in running campaigns where you're doing $50 a month in spend. Now, when you're in a campaign that's a couple $1 million a month, it changes how you actually go about doing management of advertising. You're typically running a huge portfolio, and so what you're doing is trying to find the largest segment of some change that you can make on a large segment of the portfolio that in total will improve your performance. Now, in a smaller campaign, it's different. I had to go back over the last 6 months and restudy and retune myself And I went back and reread the Perry Marshall book, which is excellent. Some of the stuff is dated in there, and I think they've actually got a new version coming out maybe later this year. So I look forward to reading that and the updates there. But it's still very pertinent and very good. So I'd recommend that anybody who is interested in trying Google AdWords out, go read the Perry Marshall book on that topic. It's quite good. But when you're running a smaller campaign in a niche market, or just you're not like a broad portfolio campaign, you can do things. You do things much differently, and you spend a lot of time really, really honing in on what's going on in the consumer's life. And this is not in a skeezy kind of way. Our job is to really dig in and understand what's happening and how can we help them and what solutions can we provide to them. And advertising sometimes has a stigma for whatever reason, sadly, but I think that you can use advertising as a force of good. And we try to do that in everything that we practice and everything that we do. But in a smaller campaign, you really get to spend some time understanding what's going on, perfecting ads, perfecting your campaign, the structure, etc., and making sure that you're providing and getting the best performance that you can out of those particular campaigns. Over the last several years, and it's been probably 3 years since I did an AdWords campaign personally. As you grow an agency or a company, you tend to start hiring folks and teams to do that stuff. You're working on processes and ways to improve just the operations of running campaigns as opposed to getting in there and actually doing the work. So I had to go back and rehome my skills. And a lot's changed over the last couple of years.
It sure has. I can definitely speak to that.
No doubt. On the AdWords side, quality score is, it's a damn holy beacon now. You got to really, really pay attention to it. And as you're deeply aware, there's 3 main parts. There's your landing page. There's, your expected click-through rates and just general relevance of the ad. So, what I found, I've done a ton of landing page experiments, and it's interesting. You can get a good quality score on the landing page, but it converts very poorly. What we found is that the shorter the better, typically. You don't want to confuse people with a lot of information, and oftentimes, in order to get a good quality score on the landing page, you have to have a ton of information and text and relevant things on the landing page, which can harm performance, conversion rates. So you have to spend a lot of time towing the line and finding the right balance between those. But probably more important than that is really, really spending a lot of time on the ads. And getting those click-through rates up is what really separates from the men from the boys, or the ladies from the girls, if you will. And you got to really hone in and really spend time writing those ads, which means you really need to understand how and what's going on in the mind of the consumer. And there's certainly some tips that I can share around that if you like later.
Yeah, and that segues back into what you were talking about earlier about really when you're running smaller campaigns, when you're running, campaigns for Home Depot or for a medical services company where we're spending $500,000 a month, and what you're trying to do is get as much traffic as you can. That's the whole point, as much traffic as you can as at a certain cost. But when you're really boiling down to some of these smaller campaigns, it's very important to understand your customer, and we talk about it a lot. A customer avatar, or really understanding that customer. And so that swings back around to what you were talking about, understanding that customer, writing these ads very specific, getting the click-through rates because there's some interesting things that you touched on there, getting that click-through rate. If your click-through rate is at 2%, if you can increase that to 4%, you've doubled your traffic. And if your conversion rate stays the same, you've doubled your revenue, right? It's as easy as that. And so,
and it gives you cost efficiencies on your CPC, Jax. So, if you double from
say that again. What'd you say?
2% to 4%, it improves your cost efficiency on the CPC side. So if you go from a 2% to a 4%, it's going to, all things being equal, your cost per click is going to drop down, and you're going to have higher positions. So you're going to get more traffic just from the click-through rate. However, they're going to put you in the higher positions, which will give you even more traffic. So it's often a redoubling, a double redoubling effect, if you will. So on this, I've spent a lot of time over the last many years really trying to deeply understand how you can make advertising as effective as possible. And we talked through part of this, but I want to dig in. So when it comes to understanding what's going on, like people are typing things, people have real pain and need real solutions out in the world. For instance, when we're doing ours, and we finally refined and started talking to customers in this particular segment, their lives, they really, they're in a tough spot, and we need to help them, and we're convicted to do so. But what you need to do is you need to find a way, either through Google Ads or otherwise, to talk to a lot of people in your market. And you need to ask questions like, what, in regards to this subject matter, whatever that may be, whatever your market is, what are you worried about? What are you thinking about? What are your pain points? What do you think this will solve for you? What does your ideal world look like in the future? And if you talk with enough people, and you do need, it's important, and I know it can be, it can feel like a daunting task to get on the phone with people, but it's crucial to find a system where you can get people in and talk with them at will. And then they'll tell you like, hey, I've tried this and that, and I'm worried about, the health of my child. I'm worried about, them getting picked on in school. I'm worried about yada, yada, yada. And when you talk to enough people, large and recurrent themes emerge. And it's when you start to understand that, right, and what's really happening in their world, what's really happening, what is the real pain, and how can you craft a solution that will help in some way, then you're able to create ads that just crush it. We're running ads that have 15, 20% click-through rates, and landers that have 20% conversion rates. But I can assure you that it would not be the case if we didn't understand their pain and understand how we can best help them. So it's critical. I've been thinking over the last few months. I've built a lot of products and built a lot of software, and one of the big methodologies there is known as Agile, the Agile methodology. Back when you're building software, from the 70s through the early 2000s even, you followed a method that was called Waterfall, where you basically went out and you wrote this big doc, and you're like, hey, this is all the stuff that the software is going to do. It's going to be great, rah, rah. You spend a year or two, whatever, however long building it, then you release it and find out that nobody really cares. Nobody really wants to use all those different features that you built. And Agile product development rests on, hey, build the smallest thing that provides as much value as you can and get it out the door to people and start getting feedback from them, talking to them, and understanding how you can be better and how you can help. And so Agile is effective. It's very effective to build products. What I've been thinking about over the last several months is how to combine those things and right now, for lack of a better term, I'm calling it agile advertising, where you're able to understand that a market is big and that it exists. You understand what the pain points are using even the methodology that I just described. You get a baseline kind of top of the funnel going, but that informs the products that you need to build. You combine that with agile development, and you can get effective products out the door while simultaneously creating a top of the funnel that works.
Interesting. So I love that idea. We'll call it the Lumpkin Method, but I love that idea of comparing agile software development to advertising itself, because one of the things that I struggle with, and you touched on it a second ago, is that a minute ago, is writing those ads that are creative. I focus on on writing ads and trying to get traffic, increase that click-through rate, and also write an ad so that I don't get clicks that I don't want. Right, to make sure that you narrow down so that you increase your chances of getting a conversion, either a lead or a sale, whatever that is. But getting creative in that ad copy is something I think this ties in really well with what you're saying, is if you really know your audience and you build that out and get feedback from them. So get a product out the door, get feedback from them, and then you can help them, your customers can help you write those ads, and not just write the ads, and not just, we're not just talking about traffic here. We're talking about building successful businesses that impact people's lives in a positive way, right? So, and this circles back around to what you were talking about is, advertising can do good. It can do good when you're putting something in front of somebody that they truly want. You're not pushing something on them. And this is all, it seamlessly weaves together. Do you agree with that whole idea?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. With, particularly in e-commerce, you'll run a search on something and you'll see that by and large the ads are very similar. And I was talking with somebody the other day who had a problem with their competitors were eating their lunch, but the ads and on several of the searches are just everybody's doing the same thing. Yeah, free shipping, cool, great, that helps. $10 off, fine, cool. And you certainly need to integrate that stuff. But what is the point? What is the point? Like, why are people searching for this product? What are they trying to get? What fulfillment, what benefit do they derive from it? And so it's important to create ads that aren't the same as everybody else. Try different things, wildly different things. Understanding, and if you talk with a lot of customers, you'll have plenty of material to draw from, and try wildly different things. And you'll see that when you really line up the right, conversation in the ad with the conversation that's happening in the mind of your customer, that it's fire. It blows up campaigns in a good way.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I've been struggling with that with that combination over the years, because free shipping, it's important, right? So let's talk about e-commerce for just a quick sec, because that's I think we have a big audience of e-commerce people, and some of that on writing ad copy in Google, and in Bing and in Facebook, you have a certain amount of characters, a certain amount of space to work with. And so, free shipping is important, or a $10 off coupon, or actually identifying you've only got a certain amount of space. However, Google, I think, is understanding this, and there's been some recent advancements in the ad. There's things called call outs that are brand new in Google AdWords, like literally launched this month. And this I'm seeing this as a way to help us write ads, and I think that Google understands it at least, and I'm certain that the other guys will pick it up. But you don't want just your ad to be like everybody else's, because they all are, and there's a good reason. The reason they are like that is because they work, right? People, they're buying something and they like, well, if I can get it for free shipping, that's where that makes sense. Google is doing these call outs where the stuff like free shipping and your coupons and your Halloween specials or whatever those are, those can be pulled to the front in a call out as opposed to in your ad copy. So that could leave us space to do what you're talking about, right? Where you write intriguing ads that really that solve that problem, that reach out to the person and help them solve a pain or help them create a solution. And that to me is exciting. And also that some of the other, breaking into some of the other platforms, YouTube advertising I think is really exciting right now for that same purpose, because you can break out of that mold of what everybody's doing, get super creative and just do stuff that nobody else is doing and identify problems and solutions that your competitors aren't doing. So
absolutely, yeah.
I love it.
I mean, YouTube, I agree with you 100%. YouTube's a great channel. There's a ton of great channels. I mean, display has, I mean, over the last several years is just so good, so much better than it used to be. And there's a lot of opportunity there. And now I will caution e-commerce folks. It's a lot more difficult in e-commerce to make that stuff work in a profitable way. It can be done in certain section campaigns. I personally would definitely start with search first. But they're, in lead gen campaigns and in certain markets, even if you're selling a product like, display can just crush search. I mean, just like the volume is just absolutely astounding. Your ability to target things. Right? So Facebook is a great example, if you will, and you want to bucket it under display. It's kind of hybrid display, but it's, there you have such rich targeting options. I spent several years working on this Facebook stuff, and they're coming out with stuff all the time and constantly refining it. And it can be supremely effective, and the volume is tremendously huge. So depending on what situation you're in, that's something I would definitely consider experimenting with. I mean, it's just so much more robust than it was in the past.
Yeah, have you been working with Facebook advertising recently, or what are your thoughts on the Facebook platform?
Yeah, I do. I have been working on some Facebook advertising. It's great. Their ads and formats and feed formats, particularly on mobile, can just destroy it. You can have click-through rates that are better than search in some cases, and when you lean on search, and I recommend that people do, but we used to say it's streams versus ponds or lakes. When you're doing search, it's like you're fishing in a stream, right? I fly fish a lot, so every day, a certain number of people search on this set of terms. And so, 5,000 people a day or whatever, roll by, and you're sticking your ad out into the world, you're sticking your poll out, and, you're able to draw some people in with your ad. And tomorrow that's going to be refreshed with a different set of people. The next day it's going to be refreshed with a different set of people. In Facebook and in display, it's like a pond or a lake. There's this big set of people, and you can go to this section of the lake and fish there, and you're going to get certain types of fish, and you can go to a different section and get different types of fish, or go to a different lake and do it. But, typically there is a set number of folks that are in that lake or pond, as opposed to it constantly refreshing day after day. Now, that being said, on search, you're capturing demand that exists. So people have problems, they have issues, they have something they're trying to solve, they have something they're trying to buy. They search for it, find a solution or not, and then they're out. But so the demand is generated already in some way, right? So there's been some trigger event that's happened that caused them to execute that search. Now, in a lot of products, particularly new markets and things like that, the search volume is not large, or mature yet, or maybe it's growing, maybe it's not, then you can be very effective in display networks, because what you're doing, you have to go about it differently, but you can generate demand where it doesn't necessarily exist, or that people aren't like actually searching for it. And if you can effectively go out and draw, and make it profitable to do so, then you can go out and search many different lakes and ponds and just generate tremendous amount of volume, when in comparison you have a stream that's only producing 100 fish a day.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And building those audiences, I know that Facebook is getting to where, so building the audience is kind of like, deciding which lake you're going to go to or which side of the lake you're going to go to, because those audiences are pretty powerful. You can really drill down to some great things. You know exactly what kind of fish you're fishing for, and you know what kind of bait you need to use. Right.
Right.
So that's pretty exciting. The Facebook stuff for sure, especially with those audiences, and Google has done really well with the display audiences as well, to make it much more effective. What you said something earlier as far as lead gen, getting click-through rates that are higher than search. That blew me away, which I totally believe it, but that seems crazy to me. But so if you could expound on that a little bit, that'd be great. Just your thoughts and ideas on really boosting not the conversion rate, but the click-through rate of display or interruption type advertising.
Sure. All right. So first, there's two main points here. First is that we've already gone over in some detail, is getting close to the customer and understanding what's happening. I don't think that you can run, if you do that, not many other companies or people will do that, and it'll give you such a tremendous leg up on your creative, and then inform you into how you can help. That is like step number one for me. And so if you got that covered, then you're going out, and so you want to understand, like, what do these customers do? What do they want? What other things are they interested in? What dreams do they have, et cetera? And that'll give you ideas as to the segments or channels that you can try and display. So they're going to have affinities that they go for, and they're going to like certain entertainment and media. They're going to, and it's going to be, you're looking for things that are disproportionately skewed in your audience base, right? So, let me see. Okay, so we're running back in the earlier days of Blink, we ran a campaign for Florida's Natural. It was a big campaign, and we were doing it at the time to generate likes, and so several years ago. But what we found is, we created a tool and an algorithm to understand what other affinities and likes and interests these people had. And so what we found is that people who like Florida's Natural are, crazy to find out, fundamentally more patriotic in the U.S., U.S. patriotism, than, and it was, you'd see all of these kind of patriotic related themes and terms. And when we use that stuff as targets, it would just crush it. Just crushed it. Our, the effective cost per like was tremendously lower. And, if I'm not mistaken, Florida's Natural even pulled, started pulling like the American flag and stuff onto their cartons. And so it was pretty interesting. And when you understand the audience like that, it gives you some ideas from which you can go out and target. Now, really the second prong here, and it cannot be understated, and it's absolutely critical and vital to any campaign, is test. That means you're going to be testing into different targets. You're going to be testing different creative into them. And people, when they're buying media, the most common thing is that they just give up. They give up too soon. So you should expect that it's not going to be efficient when you first start. It's just not. I mean, it's very few and far between where I start a campaign and it's just a smashing success. It's always about finding new targets, finding new creatives into those targets, matching the creative and target appropriately. That allows you to unlock and drive tremendous efficiency. So when you start a campaign, no, it's not going to be efficient. But stick at it, keep testing, and you can and will drive down the cost. I mean, the most recent business, I started out, building a list, email capture, and started out at $35 an email, and that's too much. Let's just say that's too much. But after a couple of weeks of work, was able to drive it down in the $3 to $5 range, right? So a factor of 10. And so that's possible, but you have to really spend a lot of time testing every piece and target. The ad, the landing page, the targets, all that stuff is critical and matters.
Yep, always. That second prong, that you remember did you ever see the movie Glengarry Glen Ross? When Alec Baldwin comes in and he put the coffee down. Coffee's for closers, right? And he's A always, B C closing. I always say A always, B T testing, right? It's always be testing.
Yeah.
And you also touched on something that I can't stress enough, is that that your campaigns, if you just kill it right out of the gates, it is a miracle, right? That's like finding a needle in a haystack. It happens every once in a while, but I cannot stress enough that you absolutely have to spend some money. You have to invest in it in order for it to work. Because if you give up, and your competitors will give up if you just go out and spend a little bit of money and say, well, this isn't working for us, they'll give up if you continue to do it. If you get those, $35 an email, like you said, is tough to be profitable, at least in that particular market. I have some places where leads are, we're willing to spend obviously $125, $150 a lead.
Sure.
But obviously you want to get that down, but if you start at 35 and you're able to get it down to $3.50, $3 to $5, now we're talking, right? And so, but you have to be able to spend that money. You have to figure out what's working and what's not. And if you give up too soon, or if you're not testing, then it can all come crumbling around you, or you leave a ton of money on the table, which is normally what happens. That's normally what what happens is people are just leaving everything on the table for their competitors to grab up. So.
Yeah, I mean, I had a buddy, I was at lunch with him the other day, and he's like, Charles, what can I do with $2,000 in ads? My immediate response was not much. Like you're basically setting yourself up to burn $2,000 and forget it. Like there's not enough. There's not enough runway there to get the ad spend down. I mean, I spent a couple $1,000s driving from 35 down to 3, and I mean, I'm comfortable with doing that now, and particularly for new advertisers, and you don't necessarily have to spend $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 to drive your efficiencies, but keep at it for sure. I'm comfortable now, understanding that it's a game of craps. However, it's very calculated, and you get better and better at rolling the dice. And so just persevere.
Yeah, that absolutely. That is, and something that, and you touched on it, because my first reaction is when I get that is, you're not gonna be able to do much with $2,000, right? And so, but there's a lot of advertisers out there where you have a specific budget, and when you're small, you're scared because it may be the last $2,000 you have, and if that doesn't work, so but there's still some things that you can do. You can something I'm working with a client. They have an established budget, but they also are trusting us to make that small budget work. And so what we're doing with them is, instead of just spending it all in one place, we're doing it little by little so that we can figure out what works. It's just going to take us longer, right? It's just going to take us a little bit longer time, but we're being very strategic about it. So we're running these ads at different times of day and different times of the week, and we're trying different platforms, but with small amounts of money. And yeah, it's going to take a lot longer than it would if you can throw a bunch of money at the problem or at the advertising issue. But you can get, I think the idea here is to get creative, just like what we were talking about with ad copy and with understanding your customer, doing stuff that your competitors aren't doing, but getting creative with it. And you can get creative with your ad spend too and your budget. So
absolutely, you're right. You're 100% right. It's just going to take longer. So the calculus for us in this business is, fairly straightforward. I mean, I have a daily burn. And we need to get to answers and get the product out and get revenue in the door as soon as possible. And so it makes it a lot easier to go out with the big guns, and spend money so that we can get to those answers quickly. Now, if you're in a position where you don't have daily burn, or it's very low, then you can afford to take the time to just really be strategic about your campaigns. It will take longer, but persevere.
Yep. Interesting. That's great. Well, I know that you've got to go here in a sec, and I really appreciate all your time. I did want to get your permission I've gone back, and I'm still using it back on charleslumpkin.com. In the old days, you had this great video series. And as a matter of fact, this first module for americommerce.com on their blog that I just wrote about, the first part that I hounded, the people that are reading the article are probably sick of hearing about it, but I was stressing customer lifetime value. And I had grabbed this idea. I mean, obviously it's something that's incredibly important, but I want to get your permission to continue to use some of that content, because a lot of this stuff is really, it's age old, right? These are things that are going to help us beat our competitors in the online advertising or any kind of advertising, and to crush our competitors using these things, something like customer lifetime value. So
sure, yeah. Please use it your will, my man.
Yeah, that's awesome. It was, I'll send you the article, but I really hounded on it because it's something that I believe along these same lines, and we can talk about some of these other topics. And I'd love to have you back on in the future because I think we have like minds, and you've come from a lot of experience managing large budgets and starting small businesses, growing them into big things. And so I'd love to have you back on to discuss a lot of those things. So I'm excited about it.
Sure thing, man. Just let me know. And congrats on your success today. And for everybody listening, keep at it. Go crush it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, Charles.
All right. Have a great day.